Hey everyone, I thought I'd make a video to talk about scams that I've seen lately on Craigslist. I mean, they've come up in the past, but I've seen quite a few new flavors of kind of old scams, if you will, on Craigslist more recently. So a little bit of background. Recently, I've been kind of dabbling in various gigs that I didn't do in the past, and I'm kind of dabbling in them on Craigslist nowadays, especially photography. I got really fascinated while viewing got really fascinated with photography while viewing the solar eclipse of 2017 here in the western United States, northwestern United States. I viewed it in Salem, Oregon. I think I have a video on my channel, by the way, of the eclipse. And after that, I've been dabbling in various people in the area who need to have their Airbnb photographed to rent out, obviously. And sometimes people want to sell a car. And one of my favorite things to do that I like to offer to do is I can get the moon or various planets rising or setting behind the person's home or their car or whatever it is they're trying to do. So one time I arranged to have a family and their family dog and the house with the full moon rising behind their home. They live in the place that, as long as I can see where they are on Google Maps, I can kind of tell what time of day that will work out. Now the problem is that sometimes on Craigslist, there's this, people seem to feel anonymous. You would never meet up with somebody or call somebody and you're kind of uncertain, but you talk with conviction like you want to do this. It just doesn't feel right. But when it's over a computer line, and I think Craigslist makes it even worse because they hide your name and your information. You see, 10 years ago on Craigslist, it used to be, if you posted something on Craigslist and somebody emailed you, their email address would actually show on your end. I used to love that because I used to collect coins and I would buy and sell coins. And oftentimes people would email me and I could instantly get some general information about the person. If they had their email address showing and their name, that would imply their gender, obviously, and sometimes it would imply their age, because sometimes people put their graduation year or their birth year in their emails, and sometimes, depending on the name, you can kind of guess the person's race. And if they're offering to buy a coin, it's kind of unpopular to say this, but sometimes knowing that information could give you a good starting point on what number to shoot for. And unfortunately, that game doesn't work anymore. Sometimes I ask them to call me so then I can get their voice, and then I can kind of play that game. But you get the idea. The problem is people feel very anonymous because they're not giving their name or their age or whatever in the email. They can feel like a number. They can pretend you are a number or a machine. And so sometimes I get people who cancel at the last minute, or they were never interested in the first place. It's a problem for anything that you're doing, right? If you're doing photography, you need to put aside that time. And if you're trying to sell something and then somebody else makes another offer, and it just gets incredibly confusing, if you will. So one time I offered to do photography, and this guy got really excited when I said that I could get the moon to rise behind their home. I showed him examples of things like that I've done before, and on the day of the shoot I get a text message and it's something else come up, and it was not something unforeseen. It was something like, oh, we completely forgot about this meeting at school or whatever. And I replied, well, do you guys have like a rocket? They were like, what? Well, I think we need to take you and your home and your dog somewhere else in the solar system so that I can get the moon behind your house. Oh, they had completely forgotten about that. Was kind of hilarious. Unfortunately, I lost them as clients after that. On the other side of the equation, sometimes I call people and they ask a lot of questions. I was just recently hoping to help somebody do some moving, and I really only wanted to do the moving to kind of pitch what I do in terms of my photography, in terms of I like to compete in the computer Olympiad. You know, these two people that was going to move for them, they were software engineers, and I kind of wanted to network a little bit. I wasn't really worried about making a few bucks on that gig, but they asked me for a bunch of information to do some background checks and put me through a ton of headache. And then at the very last minute, they found somebody else. And what was really funny was, I think what threw them off was they were offering some number of dollars per hour. I can't remember that, 12, 13, 14. And I didn't like that fee structure. It's not that I think it was low, it's just that it was per hour. You know, if I'm really good at moving and I can handle it in 10 minutes when other people take 6 hours, I mean, I don't feel like I should be paid less. And so the way I phrased it to these people was that, how about we do a flat rate of, I think I said $60, because she mentioned it would be about 4 or 5 hours. I said, okay, how about just $60 flat? Because I hate to waste everybody's time, you know, if it's going to be per hour. And I think, you know, that's the result you'll get if you hire somebody else per hour. And I think I was being a little bit too logical, and she completely lost what I was trying to say. That's a big problem sometimes, is that I had it... see, I'm working at a kind of a startup school, if you will. It's a Washington Technology University, and sometimes when we're negotiating these contracts and I get a little bit too clever, it doesn't seem to work out. So we had this one class that stretched across when we switched to daylight savings time back in April, and this was only a 2-month course. And my dean and I were talking about this, and I was saying, well, how about we, because we had negotiated the pay, you know, she couldn't budge on that. So I asked my dean, how about we don't observe daylight savings and have the class at the same time throughout the 2 months, because that is always challenging for me. And she looked at me like I had 8 heads, and just couldn't get her to comprehend what I was trying to say. And this is a big problem sometimes. Sometimes on Craigslist, you really have to dumb down your language sometimes. One time, I had a landlord that I met over Craigslist, and she had refused to refund my security deposit, and she had mentioned why she had deducted it, and her numbers were completely wrong. And I ended up having to sue her in small claims court, but, you know, I wanted to show good faith effort in trying to reason with her. And over the course of several weeks, I had to use dumber and dumber language just to get her to say anything sensible about it. I eventually got the money back, but it was just an exercise in how much I could dumb down my language. She's from a different country, and so that might be a little bit of a problem. Okay, so yeah, I think people don't realize that they're interacting with a human when they deal online. So that's a big downfall of online interactions. So I live in an area of Seattle where recently Sears has gone out of business. We had a Sears here, we had a Toys R Us, and I think a lot of these stores, actually one of the grocery stores I love to go to, a lot of times it's not people going there anymore, it's the cashier gathering stuff that people have ordered online. And I think that sucks. I think that people have forgotten how to interact in real life. I run into this a lot because I spend a lot of time out in public, because obviously I'm looking for my future business partner for my computer game ideas, and so I like to go out and mingle. That's why I wanted to do this moving job, even though I've never even moved anything before for anybody else. Sometimes people don't read social cues very well anymore. Like, I'll go to a Starbucks and I'm minding my own business, I have my headphones on, I'm really focused on something, and somebody just interrupts me, like, for no apparent reason other than to ask for directions or to ask if they can sit next to me, when it's very clear that I'm very focused on it. I wouldn't even notice if they sat next to me. And this is really frustrating sometimes. Sometimes I talked about my travels in another video. I sometimes almost feel like I have to go to another country just to network with people, because Americans just don't... I just don't feel the same wavelength as other people. When I go to Taiwan, for example, I was recently in Taiwan for another game conference. people actually go to the store to buy things that we would normally think are online activities. They go to the store to pay their electric bill, or they go to the store to buy basically anything we would buy online. The good news is that here in Washington recently, they started to charge sales tax when you buy stuff online. So that's at least one less benefit of buying things online that they've gotten rid of. In the past, I have made large purchases to avoid taxes, but I guess now I can go to the store again. Where else does this come up? You get the idea on Craigslist. It kind of translates elsewhere as well. Sometimes people just lack all sorts of common sense. I have this dread of going to one of our local grocery stores. They have self-checkout. Sometimes the reason I sometimes use self-checkout is that I'm buying something a little bit embarrassing. And this store has this habit that if the self-checkout line is long, sometimes the cashier will call you over, and they're very insistent. Sometimes you just stand there and pretend you didn't hear the cashier, and they go, sir, I can help you, I can help you. And this is a problem, because one time I'd gone to the store to buy condoms, and the cashier who was trying to help me, had it been a guy, yeah, I would have loved to show off that, I have some other girl to fuck. But it was a girl, and I kind of had a crush on this girl as well, and I didn't want her to see that I was fucking somebody else. So that became a little bit of a problem. And I kind of gave the motion I forgot to get something else. I went back to the inside the store, and I put the condoms back, and then I had to drive somewhere else to buy the condoms. And it's such a, I think people are so used to the fact that everybody else is a number that they forget about real life. And every time I go to the store, every time I see that all the self-checkout registers are full and there's nobody in front of me in line except just me waiting for the next machine, I get very nervous that somebody's going to call me over. 9 out of 10 times I don't mind. But when I'm buying condoms or anything embarrassing, the problem is 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it used to be very challenging to eat healthy. People would hound you about how you quit drinking soda and how you're eating healthy. How did you do it? I'm so addicted to whatever. And there was a time in my life I used to love to lecture people on this, but after I started my PhD program and I was working on my PhD, I really didn't have time for that anymore. It just became a huge headache every time I had to explain myself. I used to really despise when I would travel for business, because we had to gather receipts for everything we ate, and then my advisor would hound me mercilessly about how I ate, how to get healthy, how to eat healthy. And she was my advisor, and I really had to spend time on top of all the things I had to do for her already. So it was just a huge headache on top of that. And at least nowadays people don't hound you on that anymore. Especially here in Seattle, there's more of a live and let live kind of mentality. Over in Rochester, it was like we were one big family. It was a smaller town. Anyways, don't forget, we're all human. Thanks for watching.